Hello and welcome back to the Second Chance Live channel here on YouTube. I'm happy to see that you decided to stop by to watch this presentation. Thank you. In today's video presentation, I'm going to be sharing an article that I revised that I originally wrote in November 2021. To read the article, put on my glasses and bring up the article. I want to thank you for your time. Here's the article, 12 Ways to Enhance Our Lives, Well-Beings, and Relationships After a Brain Injury. In my experience and through my process, I discovered a set of ways that have helped me in my ongoing brain injury recovery process, one day at a time. These set of ways may also help you in your ongoing brain injury recovery process, one day at a time, too. Inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, it's very hard. Excuse me. These ways have helped me to be able to accept the things that I cannot change the things that I can, and let go of the rest to a loving God, to help me sort, fulfill my purpose, and serve. Benefits that I've gained through working the 12 ways: grieving what I could not change, changing the things I can, creating my new normal, defining success for myself, finding and living my purpose, owning my power to be of service, developing my brain body connection, advocating for myself in my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions, cultivating a healthy relationship with myself, a loving God, and other people, grieving the guilt and shame of my brain injury and invisible disability, and understanding why I feel misunderstood and shunned, to find freedom, and then continuing to develop my own unique genius in life, and then discovering how to make my life magical one day at a time, opening the door to hope a little at a time. When I reached a point in time when I could no longer defend or deny the impact of my brain injury and invisible disability, I began to grieve. So here's the first way. Admitted we are powerless over the impact and the effects of our brain injury, that our lives have forever changed because of our brain injury. Although we are powerless over the impact of our brain injury and our invisible disability, we are not helpless. As a result, we no longer need to feel like a victim of or that we are helpless to change because of our brain injury or invisible disability. By realizing that all my efforts to try to change what could not be changed, I surrendered. By surrendering, I became open and willing. Excuse me. The second way, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us or could help us to accept what we are powerless to change, the impact of our brain injury and our invisible disability. Consequently, we can rely on a power that many of us have found to be a God. We can rely on a loving God to help us to stop sabotaging and undermining our lives, well-beings, and relationships by trying to not be impacted by a brain injury and an invisible disability. We can rely on a loving God to help us to accept ourselves and to create a good life for ourselves. Through accepting my inability to change what I simply could not change, I made the decision to ask for help from a power greater. And then this is the third way that I share. With the awareness that we need this power in our lives, we can make a decision to ask Him to lead and guide our process and journey. We no longer have to figure out how, figure things out on our own. Instead, we can ask Him to help us own our power. Own our power as an individual living with a brain injury and an invisible disability. Own our power through what we can do, not what we can't do. Own our power, what is in our power to control in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions in ways that work for us a little at a time, one day at a time. And then by asking for help, I began to examine patterns of what got in the way of my ability to create hope in my life, well-being, and relationships. The fourth way. With the help of a loving God, we can begin to examine areas of our lives that no longer work for us, that undermine and sabotage our lives, our well-beings, and our relationships. With the help of a loving God, we can look for patterns. Patterns such as defense mechanisms in which we strive to defend, answer, and explain what we can't do. Patterns that keep you and I believing, feeling that we are victims of our brain injury, our invisible disability, and our circumstances. As I examined what got in the way of my life, my well being, and my relationship, I realized that I needed to learn how to trust. The fifth way. We no longer have to remain isolated, alienated because of what we are no longer able to accomplish because of our brain injuries and invisible disabilities. By admitting to ourselves, a loving God, and to another person what we are unable to accomplish, we can come out of the shadows of isolation and break free from feelings of alienation. Alienation from ourselves, a loving God, and other people because of what we can no longer accomplish. By letting go of these expectations, we can learn how to trust again, trust a loving God, ourselves, and other people. By realizing that I needed to trust, I discovered that I needed to let go of what no longer worked for me to discover what works for me. The sixth way. Through being sick and tired of being sick and tired of getting the same results, we become willing to try something different. Become willing to try something different to get different results in our lives and relationships. Through being willing, we can ask a loving God to help us to stop doing things that no longer work for us, doing things that get in the way and sabotage our ability to get on with creating a good life for ourselves. In the process, we become entirely ready, entirely ready to let go of what no longer works for us living our lives. To discover what would work for me, I needed to let go of my will to ask a loving God to lead and guide my discovery process. The seventh way. Through being ready to let go of what no longer works for us, we can be actively involved in the process of discovering how to use our gifts, talents, and abilities. Discovering how to use our gifts, talents, and abilities through trial and error. In the process, we can find ways that will fit our gifts, talents, and abilities. We can humbly ask the loving God to help us in and with the process of self-discovery. In the process in the process of letting go and self-discovery, we can find and have experience. We can find and have slash experience peace in our lives and relationships. By examining the patterns of what no longer works for me, as I live my life, I'm able to make peace with what no longer works for me. The eighth way. By letting go of what no longer works for me, uh, excuse me, through letting go of what no longer works, we can pursue what works for us. In the process, we can stop being a prisoner of our deficits and limitations. Instead of trying to not be impacted by our deficits and limitations, we can accept them. As a result, we are able to stop fighting with and against ourselves. Stop fighting and with ourselves and other people by trying to prove that we do not have those deficits and limitations. As we stop fighting with our deficits and limitations, we gain the freedom to run our own race. In the process, we become the individual that we choose and decide to become in our lives. I am able to make peace with what no longer works for me in my life, well being, and relationships by changing the way I use my time and energy. We can let go. This is the ninth way. We can let go of the life that we have planned to create the life that works for us. In the process, we can learn how to use and own our power in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. Own our power through the use of our time and energy. In the process, we can create our new normal in ways that work for us, in ways that work for us through being an advocate in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. As I seek to change the way that I interact in my life and relationships, I continue to be aware of what no longer works for me each day, the 10th way. And the good news is that we don't have to figure out how everything will fit together as we seek to own the power in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. Instead, we can take the process one day, one step at a time. In the process, we can ask a loving God to guide and direct our steps one day at a time. In the process, we can trust the process. Trust that the dots will connect forward as we learn how to use our gifts, talents, and abilities. So, by realizing that brain injury recovery is an ongoing process, I ask a loving God to guide, lead, and direct my process each day. The 11th way, excuse me, we can ask a loving God to give us direction each day. We can do the footwork by letting go of the outcomes by trusting the process, a loving God, and ourselves. We can learn to trust through doing the footwork and letting go of the outcomes. We can let go of the outcomes one day at a time. We can trust that more will be revealed with time. We can ask and trust that we are being guided in the direction of fulfilling our purpose to be of service. And as I continue to ask, and as I continue to ask the loving God to lead, guide, and direct my process in ways that work for me, I encourage others to do the same. This is the 12th and final way. As we grow in the understanding of ourselves with the help of a loving God, we continue to use our gifts, talents, and abilities. Use our gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that work for us. In the process, we learn from our circumstances, our experiences, our lessons, and opportunities. In the process, we create hope in our lives, well being, and relationships. In the process, we create our destinies, one lesson, one opportunity, and one day at a time. In the process, we share hope. And in this article, I share below are 15 other presentations that I created to share what helped me to improve my life, well-being, and relationships. And I'm available to give these presentations to your members, staff, association, or organization. And the presentations are finding purpose after brain injury and stroke, acceptance and creating a new normal after brain injury and stroke, neuroplasticity, setting goals and creating hope after brain injury and stroke, believing in ourselves through self-advocacy, a guide to owning our power in our mind, a guide to owning our power after brain injury and stroke, the progression of living my best life after brain injury, making our lives magical one day at a time after brain injury and stroke, cultivating healthy relationships after brain injury and stroke, living with a brain injury and an invisible disability, how are you defining success? Living with a brain injury and invisible disability and change after a brain injury and stroke. Instead, we can create our own genius after brain injury and stroke. Grieving the guilt and shame of a traumatic brain injury and stroke. brain injury. Why do I feel so misunderstood and shunned? Next presentation, living with a brain injury. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. Next presentation, comprehensive history of a second chance to live, answering the call that never came. And the last presentation to this point in time is second chance to live and succeeding beyond my special needs from 10 years of age. And then I also have a link to the resources for ongoing brain injury recovery at the bottom of the article. And then also a link to my autobiography and bullet points at the bottom of the article. This is the end of the presentation. I want to thank you for your time. Before I go, let me encourage you with this, something that I too need to remember. Don't give up, because more will be revealed with time. The pieces of the puzzle will come together in the correct order and at the right time. I'll say so long for now. You have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. And by the way, send me comments or questions that you have after listening to this video presentation. I would love to hear from you, and I'll get back with you. Reach out to me, and I'll reach back to you soon. God bless you. Have a great day, and thanks again for your time. Bye now.